And welcome to our February 22 edition of Sports Highlights, our 30th anniversary of Sports Highlights, as we've done the TV studio, the radio studio, and of course, Sports Highlights on the road. More about that a little bit later. Our show comes on Mondays at 7 a.m., 2 p.m., and 7 p.m., weekends at 9 a.m. on Cox Cable 47, 517, nnpstv.com, YouTube, and all over social media. Our featured guest today is Paul Fuqua, a former assistant basketball coach at American University and a Georgetown University graduate. Paul, good to see you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure. I'm honored that I'm part of your 30-year celebration.
Thank you, Paul.
I hope I can bring some value.
And of course, congratulations to you on the PB&J radio show.
Yes, we now have launched the Real Estate PB&J Hour on 1310 a.m., the Money Talk station.
On Thursdays from 5 to 6.
Exactly.
Let's talk about your basketball career. You went to Georgetown.
Yep.
When people think of Georgetown, even today, they think of the late John Thompson.
They do. I was very fortunate to earn a scholarship to Georgetown, not for basketball, but academics. I was a basketball nut. I played in high school, but I wasn't good, but I had great coaches, and I spent so much time on the bench working with them, watching them, that it became important to me to learn how to teach and how to coach. I started with little tiny kids and won, then I graduated junior high and won. Then I had an opportunity to be an assistant to a renowned coach in the Washington Catholic League, Dick Myers at Gonzaga, and we won. And then I went to Eddie Tapscott's staff at American University for a couple of years, and we didn't win. And then I had the opportunity to be the head coach at Mackin Catholic High School in D.C., part of the Catholic League. Our competition was DeMath and St. John's and Carroll and Gonzaga and all those great schools in the D.C. area. And then that school closed, and I think in part because our competition on the court was realizing that there was a big program being built at Mackin, in large part because I had a very close relationship with the Georgetown coach, John Thompson.
Absolutely. And folks, just to hear that, when you're in the circle with John Thompson, that's pretty impressive. And back then, I went to George Mason, which was in the suburbs of Northern Virginia. But just George Mason, American, UDC, Howard, University of Maryland, Georgetown, they all kind of collided during the Kenner Summer League. Those were events.
Well, the Kenner Summer League, I was asked by Coach Thompson to help create that, which I did. I owned at the time a fairly successful printing company, so I made it printed programs available and was on the board and helped organize it, and then it ended up bringing in Eddie Saw, who did very, very well. They named me Man of the Year a couple times and Coach of the Year. I always coached in the Kenner League, so I had the opportunity to coach Dikembe and Alonzo and so many different players over the years. And at those days, the Kenner League, and I haven't been up there in a number of years, was a phenomenal theater because the NCAA rules were that you couldn't have two players from the same program on a team, other than the incoming freshman with a returning player. And that was always sponsored by the Tombs, the 1789 restaurant. My printing company, CLB, had a team every year, and I was given as coach projects. I had Victor Morris, a 6'10" kid out of Texas who was a great airport player and a wonderful person and a great student, but Victor couldn't play a lick. And it was a thrill to work with those players and to have them over the summer. And the question was, who were you going to have this weekend? Because they'd had their own travel plans. They had to go home for the summer. They had work to do. So you may have a roster that has a great point guard that plays for 3 weeks and then you don't see him. He's gone. But it was fun times, and the basketball in Washington, D.C., I think rivaled that of any metropolitan area in the country.
Oh, yeah, because you had, and John always respected us. He started in the 70s, at the McDonough Arena.
72.
And of course, he would always play at schools like American, even though they were part of the Big East in the late 70s, early 80s, and he played, all the great schools then. He would always play the D.C. schools because he was a D.C. guy himself.
Yeah. Well, there was so much during the summer that it carried over into the college leagues, and the high school basketball was phenomenal. You had Morgan Wooten, and you had Mackin, and you had Gonzaga. All of these private schools were churning out great players and great kids, and as were the inter-high programs, Spingarn and Coolidge and Wilson and any one of a number, Eastern, Cardozo, all had great players.
McKinley Tech.
And it was a time in the D.C. area when basketball, because of the success of Georgetown and also because of the relative success of Maryland, because they had Gary Williams coming in there after a while, the programs just grew stronger and stronger and stronger, and it was a wonderful time.
Right, and of course Gary Williams, of course, coached Boston College too, so he took on John head-to-head in the Big East then. But you think about it, back then, a lot of his games were at the Capitol Center, which is really cool in Landover, Maryland, not too far from FedEx Field as today. But when he played, Boeheim is still there. Then, of course, Calhoun, Massimino, Louis Carnesecca. I mean, it was just an event. Yeah,
those Big East coaches, they were all theater.
Right.
And the Big East game was the city game. And if you want to talk about the legacy of John Thompson, you talk about the Big East. You talk about the urban brand of basketball. I was discussing with one of your staff earlier today the idea that he taught the passing game. And it had all the elements that you see today, but today the game is a little more tightly structured because of the three. We didn't have the three in those days.
Right, and of course in '82, they lost to Carolina and Dean Smith, but he had the utmost respect for Dean Smith. They were really good friends.
They were good friends.
And then, of course, he got redemption when he beat Houston.
Yes. Well, one thing people don't realize is Dean Smith was a very heavy smoker. And you'd never see him. He would hide, he would be scouting a game in the D.C. area, and then you'd see him out there behind the gym puffing away. But he and John were great friends, and I can remember in my gym seeing Dean Smith and John Thompson and Boeheim, because we played at Mackin all these number one, number two schools. We played Flint Hill every year a couple times. We played Oak Hill Academy. If they were ranked, we played them. And it got me in trouble with our league because they didn't like some of the policies, for instance, at Flint Hill, where they had 5-year players. But Dennis Scott, great player, great high school player, wonderful college player, and was how many years in the pros? 15 years. He could shoot it. Oh.
And he went to Georgia Tech, and not to mention, Adrian Branch was from Maryland. Then you had Derek Wittenberg and Sidney Lowe. Then, of course, you had a nice connection with Coach Thompson's son, Ronnie.
Yeah, I was privileged to be allowed to coach John Thompson III in grade school, and then recruited him to Gonzaga High School. And then I had Ronnie also in grade school and recruited him to Gonzaga High School. And I say recruited gingerly because there was a rule in the Metro Conference, the Catholic League, you couldn't recruit for athletic purposes. So I always made myself available to answer questions.
And I was always impressed as a student at George Mason growing up here, because most kids from here went to James Madison or Virginia Tech. I always wanted to go to George Mason. That even Morgan Wooten back then had his own TV show.
Sure. Morgan Wooten also had an advantage in that he was on the board of the shoe manufacturers. I'll have to remember it, but Pro-Keds, whatever they were. And so he had the first real shoe deal for high school coaches. Now, when I got the Mackin job, I had a shoe deal, first with Puma and then with Nike. And it was good for the kids.
Tell the folks when you were at AU which gym you played in.
We played in the Fort Myers Ceremonial Hall on the military installation at Arlington Cemetery.
I've been there a few times.
And it was basically an arena for horses, and there was a nice floor. Our head coach Eddie Tapscott was quoted in Sports Illustrated as saying it's the only college gym in the country that is giving out a wind chill equivalent. Our locker room was it was a weight room. I have no idea what the visitors' locker room was like. And our practice facility was a bandbox that had to have been 40 or 50 years old. that had no bleachers. The out of bounds was literally 3 feet from the exterior lines of the court. And it's there that one of my biggest thrills in basketball occurred, because I was asked to attend as a member of the AU staff the walkthrough on Saturday morning of the Lakers before they played the Wizards that night. And I'm in this little gym, no place. We didn't even have places for seats. And Magic's running the show, and Kareem is there, and every one of the people that were so instrumental in creating that legendary Lakers team was there. And Pat Riley didn't even come out on the floor until 45, 50 minutes after Magic had started the practice. And everything was at game speed.
Yeah.
Everything.
Let me ask you, because you've still done some teaching clinics in Chesapeake in the past, and you're still involved with basketball. Once a basketball person, always a basketball person.
I'm a frustrated player.
What fundamentals, what's lacking today?
I think today the fundamentals are not being taught as they once were, and in large part because there's so much emphasis on the three. If you can get the shot off, you can get the shot off. I grew up and was taught that the most important thing you can learn to do in basketball first is how to catch and pass the ball. Because if you can't catch the basketball, you can't do anything with it. And then you zeroed in on what your footwork was when you caught it, how you pivoted. Heard Gary Williams give a 45-minute presentation to a clinic on the pivot. I'd never thought anybody could talk about 45 minutes, but Gary Williams he's national champion, and he knew and he thought the pivot and catching the ball were two of the most important fundamentals that aren't taught today.
Yeah, and Gary coached at Ohio State, Maryland, American, Boston College. One thing about John Thompson as we exit the show for the first segment is being part of the inner circle was big, because he had his share of enemies as well, but he also had a lot of shields, the Hoya paranoia. I remember the late Bill Chaplin, the SID, would tell me that he was kind of the shield for Thompson as the SID. So Thompson didn't have a lot of his freshmen talking either.
No, that was a rule. His freshmen did not, I think for the first semester, did not give interviews on a one-on-one. And he had an academic advisor, Mary Fenlon, to oversee that. She had been a nun and had served as the academic coordinator at St. Anthony's High School, where he got his coaching start.
She was on the bench.
She was on the bench, and she was a woman of iron.
Right.
And every freshman had to call in to her before midnight every day and tell her where they were on whatever assignments they'd been given in class. And it was her job to monitor the academic progress of these players. And they were more in fear of Mary Fenlon than they were Coach Thompson.
I think the real mayor of D.C. was John Thompson. It was nice to see him the last few years at the arena, seeing him before he passed away a few years ago, but his memory is eternal. And Paul, leave us with a parting shot here.
Well, I appreciate being part of this. You and I go back a long way, and I hope people can realize that basketball will continue to evolve, and it's because of legendary coaches like Wooten and Wooten, John Thompson, all those Big East guys, all those Nolan Richardson. The list is as long as this room is wide of people who have made this game become such an important part of our society.
There's nothing like March Madness.
That's
all right, Paul, all the best to you and the great staff of the PB&J show and real estate. That was Paul Fuqua. Stay tuned as we have a special montage of some great guests over the years. All of our guests were special right here in our February Sports Highlights 30th Anniversary Special. Stay tuned.
You're watching NNPS TV. Catch sports highlights on Mondays at 7, 2, and 7, and on Saturdays and Sundays at 9 a.m. Visit us online at nnpstv.com to view all your favorite episodes. NNPS TV, watching education happen.
Hope you enjoyed our first segment with Paul Fuqua, our 30th anniversary right here. Great guests over the years have evolved in the radio and the TV studio, a great crew, a lot of fun. We've sustained, of course, a lot of presidents have served during the time of Sports Highlights. Enjoy this montage.
Of course, Aaron Brooks graduated from Ferguson High School in 1994, and Robert Hunt as well from Menchville High School in 1994. And we'll start the interview off with Aaron Brooks. And Aaron, nice to see you again, first of all.
Nice to see you too, Greg.
Aaron, first of all, tell us about the year so far. You've been up here for 3. Actually, and tell us what it was like, first of all, going in from Ferguson to your first year a couple of years ago.
First, it was a big environment change for me. You know, I was used to the city life. Now it's not that busy up here. Charlottesville is a little quiet around here, so I had to get used to that. Then as far as school, I had to adjust as far as just being responsible for the things I had to do and just really getting adjusted to college life.
Let's get right to our distinguished guest today, the head basketball coach at Old Dominion University, Jeff Jones. Jeff, welcome.
Glad to be with you.
Good to see you once again. I guess your background started in basketball at a young age with your father in Kentucky. Talk about that upbringing.
Well, it was a lot of fun. Great childhood. We were always involved in sports, and particularly with my father being a basketball coach with basketball. And whether it was myself or my brother or even my sister, we were always playing and always around the game of basketball. So it really was part of the whole family dynamic.
Purnell, it is a pleasure to see you today.
Pleasure's mine. Thanks for having me.
Very nice. I guess it all started for you in Norfolk as a kid as far as sports in general.
In general, that's how it got started. I started boxing in 1972. I'm from Norfolk, Virginia. I lived in the projects of Young's Park, and that's where my whole career began at.
And it's a pleasure and honor right now to talk to Richard Simmons. I call him the fitness guru of the country on our June show. Richard, good to see you.
Hey, how are you?
Very good. I think every kid like myself grew up watching you while you were talking to the seniors. You made a big impact on the kids today in our generation as well.
Well, I'm hoping so. I went to Congress last year for a congressional hearing. You know, a lot of schools right now have no PE. There's more reading, math, and science. They took out PE. How can you take PE in recess from a kid? So hopefully that bill will be in the educational bill that our President Obama will sign this year. We have to get PE back, get our kids healthy. Also, focusing on the parents to cook better things. You know, it's a busy world now. Mom, dad, work, 1 or 2 jobs. The kids are eating a frozen pizza or they're going out to a fast food place. They're going to grow up with cholesterol problems. Right now, there's 15-year-old kids on high blood pressure medication. We got to do something about it. And that means the family unit has to work together to be healthy.
We are at the home of the Hampton Crabbers right here and the home of Ronald Curry since 1994, the most celebrated athlete in the United States today. Awards he has won, and you'll see them on the graphics page the next 15 or 20 minutes. And we have Ronald with us today. And Ronald, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Ronald, nice seeing you. First of all, tell us about your background, where you were born, and tell us about your early childhood days.
Well, I was born in Hampton, Virginia, spent a couple of years of my life here. Then I went to Boston City, Louisiana for a year with my grandmother when I was 4, and I moved back to Hampton, Virginia with her. And ever since then, I've been living in Hampton, Virginia.
Who got you interested in sports at a young age?
Well, I can say my best friend, William Blunt, he got me as far as playing organized football and basketball. I went out with him. He was playing. He's a year older than me, and he got me into that. But, I always play football and basketball around the neighborhood like all other young kids do.
Now we're on our Kids Are People 2 segment, talking to Kenzie Cafferty. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
How long have you been bike riding?
This is my 4th year. I started when I was 6, and then about a week after I started, I turned 7.
When you first started riding your bike, I assume it was in Virginia Beach. Where did you ride your bike at?
Well, I kind of just rode at home sometimes, and then we found out about Hampton BMX and just came out here sometimes.
It's a pleasure to talk to former Booker T, Virginia Tech, Booker T, Washington, Virginia Tech, as well as Buffalo Bill, Washington Redskins, NFL Hall of Famer from 2009, the one and only Bruce Smith. And Bruce, good to see you.
Thank you.
Very relaxed atmosphere. Bruce, first of all, I guess it all started back when you were a kid, right in Norfolk.
Absolutely. I have such fond memories of growing up in Norfolk, Virginia, and my childhood. And being one of 3 siblings, I watched the struggles of my mother and father as I was growing up. It gave me an appreciation for hard work, sacrifice, and commitment. And I'm just so thankful for the community, for folks that saw more in me than I saw in myself, and that's why I'm sitting here today.
Now, indeed, a pleasure to interview the former head football coach at Bethel High School from 1974 through 1998, the person I've admired as a kid, Dennis Kozlowski. Coach, welcome to the show.
It's my pleasure. Glad to be here, Greg.
But, Coach, you actually started at Bethel in 1968 as an assistant under Coach Shoup.
That is correct. We had to play a varsity schedule with the seniors the first year in '68, and we're very successful. And during that entire period, both under Coach Bull and Shoup and me, we put together a team that had only 3 losing seasons. He had 1 and I had 2.
It's a pleasure now to interview Bobby Dandridge, the former NBA great with the Milwaukee Bucks and the Washington Bullets, who went to locally Norfolk State University. And Bobby, it's a pleasure to see you.
Oh, it's great to be here this morning.
Tell us about the program here, the Healthy Schools Challenge, and Just Got Milk.
Well, students here at Warwick High School entered a contest, and fortunately for the high school, they're going to end up with some money. And I get the opportunity to come out and speak to some young about healthy eating and surely drinking milk at least 2 or 3 cartons a day is a healthy lifestyle, and it's very important that not only young people but we as individuals eat healthy.
All right, and welcome back. And Serena, first of all, thank you for coming down here. What does it mean, like, you see these kids out here, you remember you and your sister, your dad, it has to hit home.
Yeah, it does. It means a lot to be out here and see the kids. I was in that position before, and so I know what it's like, and so it's really cool to just be out here.
How would you compare 2007 for you? It was a pretty solid year overall.
Yeah, I guess it was solid. But I always like to do better.
What are your desires? Because it seems like with all your outside obligations, it gets tougher, the desire, the motivation just to play these.
The desire is always there, and my goal is always to take tennis #1 in my life. And, outside of God, of course, tennis is really up there.
Well, folks, it's a pleasure to talk to former LSU, former Steeler, former Jet, and former Cardinal Alan Faneca, who's also in the 2021 Pro Football Hall of Fame as the head coach of Cox High School. Good to see you.
God, thanks for having me.
Boy, it started off when you were a young kid in Louisiana, and it evolved from there.
Just kept growing. It just kept growing, and was blessed along the way. And this great journey that I got up and spoke about, got the chance to speak about at the Hall of Fame, just amazing.
We'll talk about some of that journey early on in high school. Who was your big motivator, and who influenced you the most when you were young?
Coaches. I always go back to my coaches. And I know so many people are fortunate, but I feel even extra blessed to have so many great coaches in my life who pushed my buttons, drove me, saw my drive, pushed me even harder, maybe than the guys next to me, and always demanded the best out of me, and it always brought the best out of me, which was allowed me to grow and keep continuing to get better and better.
Coach, welcome to the May edition of Newport News Sports Highlights, and welcome home.
Well, thank you, Greg.
Yeah, it's been a long journey, Coach, but it all started back when you went to Granby High School in Norfolk.
Yeah, that's right. That's aging me now. But I graduated from Granby in 1950, but actually I started going to Granby when I was in the 2nd grade, so I went through the 2nd grade through the 12th grade. So I got a letter because I was a manager for the football team, the basketball team, and baseball team when I was in the 4th grade. So I'm the youngest guy ever to get a letter at Granby High.
So you redshirted more than 1 or 2 times.
Yeah, I redshirted 3 or 4 times.
It's a pleasure and an honor to interview Mike Smith, the head football coach since 1971. And Coach, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Greg.
Coach, tell us about your background, first of all, where you were born, and how Mike Smith really got into football.
Oh, I don't know. I think, actually, I'm from Indiana originally. I was born in Anderson, Indiana, and probably when I was 5th grade or so, I went to a football game with my father and got involved in it in the 8th grade in high school, and been in it ever since. So.
Guest today is Boo Williams of the AAU Summer League. And Boo, nice to see you once again.
How you doing, Greg?
Good, good. Boo, 1977 graduate of Phoebus High School. Then you went to St. Joe's in Philadelphia, 1981 graduate. And first of all, tell us about your background growing up as a kid. When did you realize that you started to like basketball?
Tell you what, I used to like Greg, football, baseball. I played football and baseball when I was younger. I didn't pick up basketball until about the 8th grade. So that's when I started playing basketball, played at North Unity and played in the community league.
Mm-hmm.
So basketball came later on in life. Football and baseball was the first preference. And then after that, went at Phoebus High School. Went to Kickertown for the 10th grade, played with Jimmy Hathaway.
Mm-hmm.
And then played with Arnold Baker my 11th and 12th grade year. And then from there I went to St. Joe's.
All right, and welcome back to the Boo Williams Sports Complex here with Allen Iverson. Allen, and thank you for everything you're doing for the community.
Appreciate it. I thank you, man.
I guess it all started off when you were a kid and you learned how important it was to have good role models, and you're doing the same thing now.
Definitely. I was one of these little guys, that was in here, trying to make it out of this place and try to do something successful. And it just feels good to have an impact on these kids' lives. And be able to give them something that maybe they'll never have, and man, it's just a good feeling. It's a humbling feeling, but it's a great feeling, just to see the love from these little kids down here, and for me personally, just to know that I'm relevant in their lives.
And welcome back to our second segment of the April edition of Newport News Sports Highlights right here on Channel 47. Glad you're with us today. Lee Corso, one of the ESPN analysts on College Game Day right here. And Lee, nice to see you once again.
My pleasure. It's nice to be back in Michael Vick's hometown area.
Absolutely. Tell us about your background, Lee. Of course, you were a college football coach. You started as a young age. Tell us about your coaching experience.
Well, I coached at Florida State, Maryland, the United States Naval Academy. Then finally I got an opportunity to be the head football coach at Louisville in Indiana. Then I went into the pros with the Orlando Renegades and got out of coaching. And people say to me, when did you decide it was the time for you to retire? I said, when they quit asking me to coach. I decided to get into television then, and from then on I've been with ESPN now for 13 years.
Now, folks, it is a true treasure to interview one of our former graduates from Denby High School, also the College William Mary, and the head football coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, former Minnesota Vikings assistant, in his 4th year as the head coach of the Steelers, Mike Tomlin. And Mike, welcome to Sports Highlights.
Greg, thanks for having me.
Good seeing you. Tell us about this camp and what it means to you personally.
Well, this is close to my heart. We got a bunch of guys out here volunteering our time, and really we're using our passion for football, man, to teach life lessons for young folks. It was provided for us years ago by the likes of John Quillen and Tommy Reeman and others, and we're just trying to pay it forward to the next generation.
And it seemed like yesterday, Mike, that you were playing for Denby and Mike Tomlin, and when you guys beat Hampton in 1989, that was almost kind of like the first spark for Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, that was a moment. You know, it's a shame. I guess they hadn't beat them since then, but that was a big night for us. Some great memories with some good guys.
Hope you enjoyed our February 30th anniversary special. It's been a true honor to host this show for the last 30 years in studio and on the road with great producers, great guests, and a lot of you, the great audience. So I want to thank Paul Cummings, thank Ray Price. Too many names to mention, but those are two of the best right there. I'm Greg Picaveras. Thank you for being part of Sports Highlights for 30 years, and we'll talk to you soon.